Hey everyone, so today I'll be showing you guys how to pattern in Fusion 360. And the different types of patterning that Fusion 360 offers are rectangular patterns, circular patterns, and patterning along the path. And these can be applied to a two-dimensional or three-dimensional model. So to begin, let's start with the two-dimensional, and this is done mainly with sketches. So let's create a sketch on the top view really quickly. I can get my YouTube, right? And then it doesn't matter which shape we use. Let's just create a sketch of a circle and give it a diameter of 1 inch. And now, before you hit finish sketch and go like about how we would normally extrude and just sort of go to our 3D modeling phase, I want to create a pattern. And so let's start off with the circular pattern. And it's, as you can see, it's listed down here under the create section. And the circular pattern, all it's going to basically do is ask for an object that of like what you're going to be replicating or patterning around a certain point. And so this point you can arbitrarily choose, or you have to have it along like a predefined line, like a sketch line. I'll show you the different examples now. So, like I said again, the circular pattern listed down here, and the center point is right over here. So as of right now, since this sketch is not really um, full of any other, like, other lines or arcs or anything like that, you can't really get a point to revolve around. So I'm just selecting the origin. And so now when you select the origin, when you selected the object, it gives you this bigger drop down of how you want to essentially create this pattern. And so one of the first things you'll see is a distribution, and it's called full, which means, in other words, means it's going to be a 360-degree revolution. So around this center point right here, it's going to go a 360 degrees and evenly space out these circles. So if you try it out and put in 6, you'll see it evenly sort of distributes that out around the circle in a 360 degrees um, angle. However, if you want to try out partial, this is where you don't have to worry about going 360 degrees. You can actually specify what you want. So let's say we want to do 220 degrees, 220 degrees. Um, it will go around only that much. So as you can see here, it's not going to go full extent of that 360. And then the third one that's available on this distribution section is called symmetric. And symmetric essentially allows you to um, base off base off these patterns around the center point, but evenly distributing them along both sides. So symmetric basically ensures that on the left side and the right side, you're going to have evenly spaced around a certain angle. Um, so I guess a better way to show this would probably be having an angle of, let's see, I don't know, that 250 degrees, not 2500 degrees, and then said OK. And as you can see, one, two, three, four, five, six circles here that are symmetrically placed around this center point, and with that specific angle. And so that's kind of like one of those features that is really helpful with the symmetrical tool. And then I do want to mention there's also the rectangular pattern. So it's very similar to the last one where as similar to the circular pattern where you're supposed to select an object that you want to pattern or replicate throughout a certain axis, and you hit the direction this time, so there is no center point. So in this case, you'll see these two arrows. There's one horizontal one and one vertical one. The horizontal one will basically allow you to pattern or replicate the sketch that you have selected in one direction, in that one direction. So in this case, this will be a horizontal direction, left or right. This down arrow, however, will be a up and down direction where it gets replicated. So let's see, let's select a quantity of 4, and then let's go out a distance of, I don't know, 5 inches maybe. And this box is not actually fully extended out, but if you just click on it once, it will extend out to its maximum. As you can see, these are all the different applications of the rectangular pattern. So one of the main things I want to get after is distribution. So it says extent, and what this essentially means is how far you actually want the shape, the sketch to pattern out to. So let's say starting from this point here where my cursor is at to this point where my cursor is at now, that would be an extent, not spacing. Because spacing is basically how much distance you're placing between each replicated object. So just to make sure I clarified that, extent is basically telling you how much you want to go up to. So let's say, for example, I made the distance 10. You'll see that even though I put four replications of the circle, it'll go only up till 10 inches as the main distance. So that's the extent. However, if I make it spacing and let's say I make the distance 10 inches, now you'll see the 10 inches is the spacing between the objects, not the extent and how far it can actually go up to. So that's just something to be aware of. Direction, symmetric just means you can kind of pull it the other way. So as you can see here, like it's going in both ways now, left and right, not just left. Um, and then this, as you can see here, there's like a quantity, distance, and direction column right here again. And you might be thinking like, why is it the same thing listed again here? But that's just for the second arrow. So if you want, I'm gonna go change this to 2 so we can get to see actually all the sketches in one view. Okay, and let's make that 5. So essentially what this second uh like quantity, distance, and direction subsections have and is what it's used for is essentially for this second arrow. So we use the left horizontal one, and if you want to use the up and down one, you can just click on that and now change the values for the second one. So you want the quantity to be, let's say, 4 circles, and let's make it an spacing distance of 5 inches. As you can see down here, actually let's make that -5 inches. So we can go upwards. And as you can see here, it doesn't just replicate the one shape along the straight up and down axis, it replicates all the ones that you've already replicated. So you initially made the horizontal left to right ones, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 left to right circles total. And so it decided to take all those 5 and replicate them 4 more times, or 3 more times, make a total of 4 times. And basically this creates kind of like an array of circles. So just something to be aware of because you have to recognize that by replicating twice, you're gonna have like a grid basically. And so that's 2D sketches. And we'll be moving on to 3D now. So now as we go on to the 3D aspect of patterning, um, you can see that we right now have a 2D sketch, right? So we can let's make that a 3D model by extruding it. So hit that circle, extrude, and let's go up, let's say like 5 inches. And let's go back to our home view so we can actually see where we are in the work plane, hit the origin. Okay. So now what we can do in the 3D model part of it is hit the create button. So it's in the same place. And if you go to down and hover to the pattern button, you'll see that there's rectangular pattern, circular pattern, and pattern on path. And so what you'll see is that rectangular and circular pattern are very similar to each other in the 2D and 3D sketch. I'll just quickly demo how they both work. So if you hit rectangular pattern and you select this body, and then you hit select axes. So this can usually be done using the origin axis. So you can see here you have the X, Y, and the Z. But if you have like a complex object, you can usually select like the uh, solid line of one of the other bodies in the model itself. But in this case, let's just to show the demo this, let's select this axis so we can show how it patterns out essentially the same as a 2D object would. And so as you can see, we selected the horizontal axis, so it's extruding or it's replicating around the horizontal axis. And if you want to have that same array that we had before, you can actually hit this arrow, hit the plane along which it's going to be going, along which you want that second axis to go and replicate along, you'll see that you're essentially with the same thing as we had in the 2D um, part of the patterning. So it's a very useful thing to kind of have in your back pocket because when you're working on like complex models, you don't want to create every single object um, like 15 different times, and you can just use when you can just use a normal patterning tool for you, making it really efficient. So that was just the rectangular pattern. So it has very similar functions as the 2D patterning rectangular pattern tool. So now let's go with the circular pattern just to demo again. Hit the body as it says select and then select the axes. So as you can see, one difference here is that it's not asking for a center point as the other one did. It's asking for an axis that it's going to be revolving around, which is it's also mainly the same thing. So what it comes down to is the same thing. So if you look at these axes that are available to us, if you were to replicate around this axis, it would turn into some sort of like a cylindrical, spherical type of revolution. If you were to revolute around this axis, it would also give you something like that. But if you were to revolve around this vertical axis, you'll see that it's gonna give you a proper um, circular shape around it. So let's make this quantity 6. And as you can see from the top view, it creates that same circular pattern around this one axis. So if you're thinking about essentially patterning like a 3D object and you have to do it around an axis, think about the axis that you're going to be going around. So you have to kind of envision in your head like, oh, if this was like a metal rod and if I were to sort of have repeated versions of this object, how would I want it to go around that? So that would help kind of envisioning. So the distribution, same thing, same functions. There's nothing really completely different about this aspect of patterning in 3D objects. However, uh, one new tool on 3D objects is called the patterning on path. And so this one is kind of unique. So if you um, want to use this, it's mainly used in different bodies. So you have to 2 to 3 multiple bodies where you're supposed to have selected one, and you're going to replicate that one body along another body's path. And to kind of show that, because it might sound confusing, if I were to create a center rectangle in the center of this, and let's go at point 2 by point 2, so it's a square, and let's extrude that out by, I don't know, 0.5 inches. Okay, kind of looks like a torsion pendulum. So what we want to do now with this is by using the pattern on path tool is what you'll notice is it asks for object type bodies, and when you hover over it, you're like, oh, it's selecting everything. And now you're thinking, how are you going to select the path? So that's a good point, and that's why we have to go back and make sure that this body that we extruded is actually a new body, not just joint to the um, extrusion. This is a very common mistake to make. Um, so now if you were to use that pattern on path tool, and now you have 2 bodies, you select the body that you do want to actually repeat, and then you select the path. And this time by selecting the path, what you can do is select anything and imagine this body that you're actually replicating, imagine it just going up or sideways onto that path or that line. So in this case, let's say I selected this. As you can see, it gives me that up arrow. And so it's that path is now considered to be the quote unquote vertical path. And to kind of show you the other way around about this is if I go to pattern again, pattern on path, same thing. Select the object that you want to pattern, hit the path, and then this time you select the horizontal one. Now, as you can see, it gives you that horizontal path. So it's very similar to the rectangular one, but in this one, it's like you could have a slanted path or like a curved path that you want to go around. Um, There's like a spline path you could go around, and this essentially allows you to go um, and make repetition of a certain object. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So identical path direction. This essentially is kind of more of a complex one I'll delve into another video for. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching.